blame yourself for everything. Try and find the blame. Try and find where you went wrong. If you got cheated on, blame yourself. I picked the wrong person. What red flags did I ignore, right? If your business partner screws you over, how can I not have that happen again? I think if you blame everybody else, you're never going to learn anything. But even if it wasn't really your fault, if you can find a way to blame yourself, don't beat yourself up on it. Figure out some way that you missed something and how you can move forward.
Welcome to the Hard Way podcast with Joe De Sena, founder and CEO of Spartan Races. We're teaching you how to overcome your obstacles in your life the same way we teach our 10 million plus Spartans to overcome obstacles on the course, with insight from the smartest, most accomplished experts from every corner of the world. Get ready to elevate your life today.
Today's episode of The Hard Way with Joe De Sena is sponsored by Athletic Brewing Company, America's leading non-alcoholic craft brewer, and the official non-alcoholic beer of Spartan. Now you can drink great tasting brews all night long and wake up race ready without the hangover. Athletic is the most decorated non-alcoholic brewer in the world with over 70 awards for its wide selection of IPAs, Goldens, light brews, and more. Athletic Brewing's near beers are fit for all times, which means you can drink them anytime, anywhere. From now until December 31st, new Athletic customers can receive 20% off their first order of $50 or more when they visit athleticbrewing.com and use the code HARDWAY at checkout. That's HARDWAY, all one word, for 20% off your first order of TWO 6-packs or more at athleticbrewing.com.
Joe De Sena here, CEO and founder of Spartan and host of the Hard Way podcast. I got my buddy Lukas Pakter, young entrepreneur. He and I were just discussing the meal of the day. I woke up this morning to a bit of a shitstorm. I expressed my feelings yesterday on IG. You know, you're probably too young. How old are you, by the way?
22.
22, you're too young. But I grew up in Queens. I was working on Wall Street. I was very close to 9/11. My wife and I were actually supposed to have breakfast in the towers when the plane flew in. The photos from Newsweek were taken from my office because I was in the middle of having photos taken for a website we were building that day. So I happened to have photographers in the office. We're on the 59th floor. We saw the plane fly in. We got photos of it. We couldn't believe what was happening. And then obviously everything that unfolded for the 15 years following. And yesterday I was a bit opinionated on Instagram, and you're a pro at social media, so I could talk to you about this. And I just expressed my feelings that, look, if people get attacked, they're allowed to respond. I think that's, we don't want to see anybody hurt, by the way. Like, our whole mission at Spartan is to bring people together, to get people healthy, to break down barriers, cultural barriers, religious barriers, and get people sweating together. That's our goal. And so somehow that was misinterpreted to mean that, you know, I'm picking a side. We don't pick sides. I don't pick sides.
It's hard. It's such a sensitive topic. And I feel like even these days, I think the biggest problem with everything that's going on is people have just automatically assumed there's only two sides. You either are supporting Israel and genocide and all this, and then on the other side, you're supporting, the opposite, people not being able to defend themselves. And in reality, nothing is black and white, but you're not allowed to say anything, or else you automatically get put in one of those categories. And then you have a ton of enemies, a ton of people that are upset. So it's hard. I think that's social media, though, as a whole. I think in a lot of ways, you're not supposed to be liked by everyone. I think anyone in the spotlight is going to have that kind of polarity.
Yeah, polarity. But the one thing that I do love, and I think you would agree with, and I hope we can get more people in the world to agree with, is the conversation has to happen. Like, I like the fact that there's now a conversation between me and a bunch of people, because we get to discuss all the issues, right? The fact that there isn't just two sides. I get to understand more. Maybe they get to understand more. Like, this world where we live in a bubble and we only listen to like liberal language or conservative language or this side or that side is not a healthy world.
I fully agree. I think there absolutely needs to be discussion in order for there to be any progress. But once again, that's where you need to make the argument that like just calling someone a bad person isn't going to, no, you never convinced anyone that they were wrong by saying you're a shitty person, you know? So, and once again, I think you kind of touched on it perfectly. You might have a misunderstanding of the overall subject, right? You might not know everything. And so that's where it's the person's job trying to convince you to show you that reason or that perspective that you're not able to see, not just say, you know, you're a piece of shit. And because that never creates any sort of dialogue and no progress whatsoever once again. So I don't know. And it feels like it's getting worse and worse. You know what I mean?
It is. And so then what happens? Is that media and businesses and educational institutions, they shy away. We end up all shying away from taking a stance on anything because then we're afraid at what the outcome will be. And so, and that's not good. That's not good either. We're going to look the other way when bad things are happening because we're afraid to say something. Right? That's not good.
Yeah. And it's crazy because this like literally is the probably oldest conflict in the book. It's not just about like what's happening right now. It's like about what's been happening since. It's like this fight has been going on for so long. And it's always been there. But now it's on our doorstep and people are having to choose sides once again. I don't know what'll happen. I am very, who knows what'll happen? I'm very interested to see, just out of like a curiosity standpoint and trying to understand more. And I'm trying to still come at it from a balanced perspective. I'm Jewish myself. I've had plenty of hate online, from the other side, even though I haven't even like really picked a side, I just get thrown into one. But yeah, it's a tough conversation for sure.
Well, we either have to be part of the problem or part of the solution. So I believe discussion is good. So I'm glad we're talking about it. Let's switch gears now for something less important, because that's big, right? That's global. That affects a lot of people. But you and I will have some fun on a personal level. You're a young entrepreneur. You started a company. Always impressive for me when those young people get after it. I'm sure it's the hardest thing you've ever done in your life because that's what business is. How's it going? Tell us about it. What's the name? How'd you come up with it?
Sure. So yeah, I'm serial entrepreneur since I was a kid. First business when I was 9 years old. Lots of failures, lots of lessons. The most current one, what I'm working on right now, is an athletic apparel brand called SquidHaus's. I guess that means I'll explain the name. And I love when people ask because it's a strange name. It's not something typical. It's not. I feel like most people pick generic names these days because they think that'll be easier for people to understand. But it's hard to build a story around that. Whereas ours, SquidHaus's, it has a meaning behind it. And so if you've ever heard the term squid, it's like an insult, right? Derogatory means soft and spineless, right? Essentially bottom of the food chain, bottom of the totem pole. And then Haas is kind of Urban Dictionary for a stud, good at everything, right? A winner. And so the whole brand is about growth, progress. Essentially, have you climbed Everest? I think I heard about that the other day.
Aconcagua. I was on my way to do Everest. That's a story we can get into.
Sure, I'd love to. But yeah, it's essentially the whole brand is about like a climb that never ends. And so it's about representing that entire journey. And there is no finish line. As you know, you're probably one of the kings of that. There's no peak. It's just always trying to get better. And I think fitness I think it is the most raw and most easily understandable way of achieving that. And then if you can figure that out in any sort of fitness or athletics, you can apply those same methods to everything else in your life. So that's why we created the brand.
I love it. First of all, I love young people getting after it. I love young people that are into fitness. And I love the fact that you've already recognized that it is a punch in the face every day trying to get ahead. It's so much easier just to get a job. It's just so much easier. Just get a job, work for somebody.
I think until you see what it's like to create something yourself. I'd fully agree. I think at the beginning, like this idea of being your own boss and starting something from nothing is really intimidating. But I was just talking to my uncle about this. He's like one of my best friends, even though he's 44, I think. He worked the same job for 20 years, working for his best friend. Got no equity. The guy was like, I'm a one-man show. Sorry, bro. Like, I love you, but it's not going to happen. And so finally he quit during COVID, started his own company. And he said, I can't believe I waited this long. I can never go back. And so I think it is hard to someone that hasn't experienced it yet. But then once you are an entrepreneur, what sounds really hard to me is like working at a gas station for 8 hours, you know, a typical 9 to 5. That sounds miserable. So I love my job, and it is hard. It's working all day long, but it's fun.
Yep. I love that. Where are you guys operating out of?
So I'm in Austin, Texas right now. Just moved here. My partner, who's also my cousin, is in LA. And we're kind of all over the place right now. Like all of our C-suite execs are in different places. Our executive creative director is over in Florida. I'm in Austin. We're spread out right now. But that's one of the beauties of business these days, I feel like, is you don't need to all be in the same spot. Eventually, as we continue to grow, I'd like to make our home base out here in Austin. But we've been able to grow it pretty significantly over the phone, you could say.
How are we going to get all these SquidHaus youngsters to do a Spartan or a Tough Mudder? What's our plan?
I'm really glad you asked that. Okay, so the way I'll explain it is I could go to the UT campus here, post up with a booth, and sell clothing to kids. And I'd probably find some success with it. Maybe I sell 50 to 100 pairs a day. But what would be much more effective is if I leveraged my platform to get as many eyes on it as possible. And so an example of that could be going up to students saying, if you do 50 push-ups, I'll give you a free pair of shorts. And then that video blows up and it gets 1 million views, right? That is maximizing your output for what you have available, right? And so originally I just wanted to go college to college and do college-centered tours. But now, and I think this is just much more effective overall and would be a lot more fun, is I want to get together all of the biggest fitness and athletic influencers on TikTok and on YouTube and on Instagram, but TikTok is where it's all going to be driven from. And I want to give, and if you don't approve of any of this, like we can always work on it. But my idea is I want to give each one of these influencers a code, right? I want to pair them up onto teams, red team, blue team, green team, yellow team. And these influencers are allowed to use their coupon for their followers. So normally a Spartan Race, what is it, $300?
125.
125, okay. So with this code, you could get it for a 20% discount. Now the ticket is $100, and they sell them to all their followers. They bring as many people out here as possible, and all of the proceeds from these tickets for this one particular race, I would like to have each of these teams be able to pick a charity and donate it to, with the overlying goal of donating $1 million total.
I love it.
10,000 tickets. I think that's actually easy with the reach that a lot of these guys on social media have. Some of my friends have millions of followers. Some have a few 100,000. But if we can get anywhere from 50 to 100 big influencers with big cult-like audiences similar to mine, I think selling 10,000 tickets would be easy. And that's great. Like you get these guys to bring their fans out and support them and work together and you know, accomplish these challenges on the course together. That's great. You get 10,000 people signed up, possibly more. But the real impact is going to be the content that comes from all this. We need to record every inch of this thing, because I'll be honest, like the only Spartan ad I see right now on TikTok is just someone climbing. You're probably familiar with it. It's someone climbing a little sand mound in the desert. And it just says like, I think the voice in the background says like, the only reason that matters is yours. And I just don't think that's enough to get people my age involved, right? Like I don't want to go do a race, even though I know it's good for me, if it's a ton of middle-aged men and women, even people in their young 30s. Like I want to see young, good-looking, athletic, masculine dudes yelling, working together, laughing. Like I just want to see energy, you know? And so I want to bring the biggest creators together, get their followers out there, and just create this big event and record every single piece of it. And then that content you can use for years. And beyond just having really good video that you can run ads on, everyone in them will be recognizable. So now no longer is Spartan something that's kind of foreign to me if I've never really heard of it before. But if I see my favorite creator, who I'm like a diehard fan for, and he's having a great time, and you can see his arms around all the other boys like yelling, getting ready right before the race starts, that would get me pumped up. That would get me excited to go do this. And so that's my whole plan with the whole thing. And I think the race in Austin on May 22nd, I think because Austin is such a fitness-centered city, and it also being in the center of the country, I think it's the perfect location to set this whole thing up.
Today's episode of The Hard Way with Joe De Sena is sponsored by Athletic Brewing Company, America's leading non-alcoholic craft brewer, and the official non-alcoholic beer of Spartan. Now you can drink great tasting brews all night long and wake up race ready without the hangover. Athletic is the most decorated non-alcoholic brewer in the world with over 70 awards for its wide selection of IPAs, Goldens, light brews, and more. Athletic Brewing's near beers are fit for all times, which means you can drink them anytime, anywhere. From now until December 31st, new Athletic customers can receive 20% off their first order of $50 or more when they visit athleticbrewing.com and use the code HARDWAY at checkout. That's HARDWAY, all one word, for 20% off your first order of TWO 6-packs or more at athleticbrewing.com.
Consider it done. Let's switch gears. Young people listening, if there are any young people listening, and it's not just a bunch of middle-aged white guys, like you said, they want to start their business. What do they do? How should they do it? How do they take that first step?
Well, the first step is always the hardest one. It's always the most intimidating. And there is never a playbook. I think you can watch as many videos online as you want. You can read as many books, go to as many seminars. But I would say the first business you start is probably not going to be the one that makes you rich. And I think you should get that out of your head. If you're a young entrepreneur and you have like this dream of becoming really successful, the first one, I would just go into it with the mindset, this is not going to be the big one. I'm just going to use this as a learning opportunity. So start with something that's familiar to you, something you're passionate about. Could be clothing. It could be a gadget you use at the gym. It could be anything you're interested in as a kid, but use the first experience as a learning experience. Don't go into something thinking like, I'm going to get rich off this one. Because like, are you familiar with Fanfics?
No.
It's a premium content platform for guys like me, creators. And my buddy started it. I think they're worth like $275 million right now. They've gone from 3 employees to over 100 in the last year. And I sat down with him about 2 months ago at lunch and I said, what's the secret sauce, bro? Like, what do you accredit this success to? He said, Pakter, this is my 12th business. This guy's 24. And he started 12. So I think that really puts into perspective, like, you have to just try and fail over and over and over to learn. And if you just keep doing it, it will work out. But you can't have a timer in your mind. You can't say, like, it needs to happen by the time I'm 25 or 30. You just have to know it will happen. I'm just going to keep going until I get there.
3 things that every entrepreneur or would-be entrepreneur should do every day. How should they live their life? 3 things to optimize their life.
Okay, so I watched your video with Alex Hormozi last night, and I heard you ask this question. So I wrote some down, but I wanted to give different ones, like not your typical entrepreneur advice. So I wanted to give something that I think young entrepreneurs in today's day and age would find the most use out of, and that's number 1, advertise your journey. I think being an entrepreneur can be very lonely and isolating. Your family members, your friends, your peers, they're not going to understand. They're not going to want to support you. And so it's very lonely. But with social media these days, it doesn't have to be. And I think the best thing that I ever did was click the record button, because obviously, like, it's contributed to my sales and the people that represent our company, but I've met And I've made so many good connections, just like this one, from my social media. So you don't have to have hundreds of thousands of followers or anything. I think if you have 3,000 followers, but you're just making videos, hey, my name's John, I'm starting this business. This was the problem I had today. This is what I decided to do about it. I think that's so valuable. And I think it puts your name out there for other entrepreneurs in a similar field to connect and network with you. Second one, get rid of the rotting fruit. If you go downstairs and you open up your blueberries or your raspberries and you see mold on one of them, you throw it away. You don't eat it. You don't leave it in there. And I think the same concept needs to be applied to the people in your life, even if they've been there since day one, even if it's a family member. Like I've had to cut out family members and friends. And it is sad and it's not ideal and you don't want to do it, but I think it's absolutely necessary in order for you to be your best self. You can't it's going to spread to you, the mold, essentially. And then my last one is actually my college essay, is blame yourself for everything. Try and find the blame. Try and find where you went wrong. If you got cheated on, blame yourself. I picked the wrong person. What red flags did I ignore, right? If your business partner screws you over, how can I not have that happen again? I think if you blame everybody else, you're never going to learn anything and you're not going to be able to prevent whatever unfortunate situation from happening again. But even if it wasn't really your fault, if you can find a way to blame yourself, don't beat yourself up on it. Don't, dread it for the next 3 years, but figure out some way that you missed something and how you can move forward.
Those are 3 very impactful thoughts. I love blame yourself for an extreme ownership. I love it. 3 books everybody has to read.
Dude, there's so many. I mean, business advice.
3 books. 3 books.
Okay, pick a topic for me at least. Self-help, entrepreneurship. What do you think? Or you want me to pick it?
I won't. Doesn't matter.
Okay. How to Win Friends and Influence People. This book sat on my bookshelf for 8 years. My dad gave it to me. And I always thought, I'm not going to read a fucking book that tells me how to make friends. That's for losers, right? And then I opened it up one day and I was like, wow, I have been missing out this entire time, right? It is an absolutely phenomenal book. I think every single person should read it. I loved David Goggins' book, his first one, because it made me feel like a pussy. And I was like, wow, I really am nobody, right? So that got me motivated and it made me feel bad. It made me feel like I thought I was the man. I'm not. I need to step it up. And then third, this one's more specific, but I loved the book Shoe Dog by Phil Knight because it broke Nike down and made it seem, and it made you understand the journey. Nike is a mountain. And when you think about it, it's like, how could someone even start something like that? And have you read this book before?
Great book.
It like, I remember him talking about how he was selling shoes out of his car, or like hiring, I think it was his sister, or maybe it was his girlfriend, to pack orders out of their basement, and how he lied to the manufacturers over in Japan in order for them to partner with him. And so it just really made me understand, like, wait, this guy started just like me. And now it's one of the biggest, most successful, most well-known companies in the world. So it gave me a lot of inspiration, and it just made it seem more possible. So I really liked that one.
I love it. You're the man. How do people find you?
You can find me on TikTok. My TikTok is Squid Pakter. Lots of raw short form content on entrepreneurship, just trying to become better in every way. And then I just started a podcast as well, Squid Talk Podcast, actually doing another one later today. And then Instagram, Lukas Pakter. Simple.
The Squid. You're awesome.
They call me Squid, yeah. Kind of like
you are the Squid. You're awesome. And for a young man, you've got it together. Everybody listening, we can get some advice. I think that'll help our lives from this young Squid.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Did you see the movie? What was the octopus movie? Did you see the octopus movie?
The octopus movie?
Oh my goodness, you're too young for that too. There's a filmmaker that fell in love with an octopus. You got to watch it.
And it's called The Octopus Movie?
No, it's I can't think of the name of it, but it's...
Oh, is this that one with Robert Pattinson?
Maybe.
The Lighthouse?
No, it's an actual like he documents a year where he meets a squid, an actual octopus, and becomes friends with it over the course of a year. It's unbelievable. You'll never eat octopus again.
All right, I'll check it out.
All right, you're awesome.
Today's episode of The Hard Way with Joe De Sena is sponsored by Athletic Brewing Company, America's leading non-alcoholic craft brewer, and the official non-alcoholic beer of Spartan. Now you can drink great tasting brews all night long and wake up race ready without the hangover. Athletic is the most decorated non-alcoholic brewer in the world with over 70 awards for its wide selection of IPAs, Goldens, light brews, and more. Athletic Brewing's near beers are fit for all times, which means you can drink them anytime, anywhere. From now until December 31st, new Athletic customers can receive 20% off their first order of $50 or more when they visit athleticbrewing.com and use the code HARDWAY at checkout. That's HARDWAY, all one word, for 20% off your first order of TWO 6-packs or more at athleticbrewing.com.